Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're talking about Zanshin. Can you be taught it? Can you learn it? And what it is and what you can do about it. So let's talk about Zanshin and what it means. You can happen across this anywhere on the internet, but you know, obviously if you're here, you're here. I'm not going to make you run off and go off somewhere else to go and read and research and then come back here. So I'll just do the shorthand version. But basically Zanshin breaks down to a awareness and a full concentration, full like presence of mind, particularly after the strike. Okay, so the way a strike works in Kendo, a valid strike, is that you engage the opponent, you close the distance, and you use seme, so you put pressure on them to try to create a situation where they feel they must strike to create an opening, or they believe you will strike, but maybe you create some sort of uncertainty in them, so they're not quite sure when you're going to strike or where you're going to strike. So maybe they get a bit twitchy or they get a bit blocky, and so you would get the opportunity that way. That's a basic description of pressure. You make the strike on target with the correct angle of the blade with Kikken Tai no Ichi. So everything needs to work in unison, your body, the use of the shinai or the bamboo sword, and your intention. So it can't be an accidental point. It has to, you have to be able to see the setup, see the execution, and then this final component is this awareness, this preparedness to strike again after the strike. Fundamentally, it constitutes of two key kind of factors that people can, one, see, and two, they can kind of feel or experience it. So the first is migamai. Migamai is this kind of awareness of the body, the preparedness of the body. So for instance, a good way to think of this is, you know, when you strike, do you strike and then just, you know, yeah, and the body kind of collapses and deflates? Or sometimes this is quite common, you see people go, man, and just stop on the spot and it all collapses. A little bit different to when you see someone cut and there's no way to go through, but they keep a full spirit. You know, it's a man, and they, you know, they're still using footwork. They just weren't able to go through, so it became like a high tayatari kind of situation where they crashed into the opponent. That's not the same as just hitting and like stopping, where you just go man and stop there. That's not enough. Another example of kind of a lack of migamai would be, you know, you make the strike and it's unsuccessful, so the flags haven't gone up or anything like that, and instead of going into tsubatseriai, which is like the binding position where you're fighting with the tsuba, the hand guard, instead of going into that position, you sort of stop in that kind of no man's land, which is like, you know, a step or two away from being toe-to-toe with the opponent, which is in the perfect range to be struck. So like, this happens quite a lot with kote, where people try to snatch the kote, they extend the shinai to strike it, but they don't really use their feet to close the distance. So they strike and stand there, and the spirit has dropped, the awareness of the opponent has dropped, and just go kote and expect, I don't know, better days. And usually, you know, you might receive a hikimen or something like that as a reminder of your lack of concentration in that moment. So that's one thing, is that there's this physical manifestations, a good kamai, creating a good distance from the opponent so that you can re-engage, or you can make a successive strike, so one strike after another. Something like a kote men, you may do the kote, and as you're closing the distance, they're backing away. So rather than just stand still and they get away, or stand still and they get the range to do the hikiwaza, you're keeping after them, but you're keeping that, you're also keeping the pressure on and keeping your options open to be able to strike whatever target should arise next from the pressure that you're continuing to put on them. So that's something else to consider, is that it's not just that you just strike, you go through, and what happens then is Zanshin. That can be one of them, but it can also be between strikes as you're still advancing on them if one strike is not successful. It can be that you need to have Migamai and Kigamai even if they struck you and the strike was not successful. So don't like get hit and then just go, that's a bad time to do that. You can be hard on yourself after the match or whatever. Not during the match. Okay, keep your wits about you. So Migamai is the physical manifestation of that. It mostly shows itself in your posture, your body posture. And you strike the men. Do you go off in the distance, just pass them, man, off in that direction? Or you strike it, man, you're building a momentum in a bit of a healthy distance, so you're not turning around like you're glued to them. But it's like 3 paces, maybe 4 paces tops. As you've gone past them shoulder to shoulder, you turn around, you get your eyes on them so you can see what they're doing, but you're still moving backwards, you're still controlling the distance, you still have a posture that you can strike from. These are the things that kind of matter with Migamai. Then there's Kigamai, the readiness of the spirit, and this is really reflected, like it's easy to see in people's posture and their actions, whether they have this or not. But also you can hear it in the voice, in the use of the shout, the hase. And that's why you'll hear very, very senior grades going on about, don't just cut, man, and have it like dip like this. Like keep your concentration. Man! Right until that point you turn around and you make chudan again, or jodan if that's your kamai, whatever. It's not over until you've had that full sequence, that start, middle, and end. Only then have you got an ippon. Now, yes, people put their flags up before they see all of that, but it's usually very clear when it's not there from the outset. And they have the option to take the point off you if it's egregious. The lack of Zanshin is egregious. But it's fair to say that maybe some Shinpan could be a little bit more observant for Zanshin. They're sometimes so moved by the strike, the setup, the opportunity and the strike, that's enough to seal the deal anyway. And there's nothing wrong with that either, to be fair. So you have to do something quite bad to like want them to go, oh geez, well his Zanshin was really poor, so we'll take a point off him. So yeah, that's something to bear in mind. Anyway, we're going to talk about a few things then as to what you can do to develop Zanshin. I don't think I can tell you what it is. People can tell you what it is. They can describe it to you. But that doesn't mean you know it. To know it, I think you have to experience it, and it's a constantly developing thing. So once you have some ability to show Zanshin, that doesn't mean your Zanshin is going to be strong enough indefinitely for every person you face in the dojo. So that's something to bear in mind. It will, like the rest of your Kendo, it will be constantly tested, and the high grades tend to pick holes in it quite easily. You thought you were paying attention, but you really weren't. But it's relative. But it is something that you can develop. So if you're a junior level coach, or you're someone who's like trying to get to Sandan, let's say Shodan, Nidan, Sandan, this could really help. So there's a couple of things, even probably Yondan as well, to be fair. There are a couple things that we can talk about in terms of drills and practices. So the first is going to be in your Suburi. So one thing that you can really work on in your Suburi is, it's quite common, especially when we do the Sankyudo kind of method, which is also like 3-step cut, right? So it's kind of lift, step forward, cut, come back to chudan, lift, step forward, cut, come back to chudan. You get variations of that. Some people like, if it's a high level class, you might want to, make more seme ashi, stepping forward, making pressure, and then lift and cut ichibyoshi, so like in a timing of 1, but you still have that step back into chudan, right? So I'm not talking about renzoku, where it's like continuous, where you step forward, cut, step back, cut, step forward, cut, step back, cut. I'm not so, you can do it in that style, but we'll get to that in a second. The easiest place to start is in your 3-step cutting method. So they go, each, you lift, step forward, cut, man, come back to Chudan. When you cut that man, you should have that intention. And as you step back, don't just autopilot your way back, right? That's the first thing. Come back with a feeling of, I'm watching you. I'm watching you, and my left leg is ready to cut you again if I need to, right? Don't think the shinai being ready to cut. Think about the legs. Think about the body. It's the posture. So this is how you train and develop a chudan, and it's to develop tamen, which is this kind of tension in the back leg, where it's ready. It's sort of preloaded to attack and go forward. You can work on that from a very, very early stage. I mean, if you're in the lower Q grades, you're probably working on other stuff, more basic things. But certainly I think if you're in the hunt for shodan, this is stuff you can start working on. So if you ikkyu, going anywhere up to sandan, yondan, and you really focus on this kind of stuff, it will pay dividends. You can do it in the continuous cutting as well. They're in zokuwaza. That's not a problem at all. So a good way to keep track of it is, you step forward, you cut, your shinai stops there, and the next thing that happens is that your front leg pushes you back, but your sword doesn't lift yet, right? So you're still doing ichiboshi. So as it pushes back, as you're about to snap that front foot back in place, finishing that step, then you cut in the timing of 1. So what's happening is, as you push off, your sword is towards the opponent, like a warning almost. You're like, men, don't move, men, stay there, men, that kind of thing. And it's just that focus. It's using all the available time in the Suburi. So don't just check your form, don't just work on the timing, don't just work on the explosive step, the fumikiri. You can also work on Zanshin as well, or kigamai, migamai, these two concepts. So that's some way that you can work on it at a very, very basic level. So in your Kihon practice, when you're just doing, menuch, koteuch, doich, your basic strikes, and you're going through, there's a couple of things that you can do to extract a bit more out of it and keep your head in the zone of practicing with Zanshin. Because a lot of times when we do Kihon men, going through kote, going through this sort of thing, a lot of times we use the full length of the room, or we're doing it in such a fashion that there's a high emphasis on the footwork going past the opponent, which is this is why you see the cut and going off into the distance, right? Many people confuse what they do in the Kihon, the basic practice, to practice their ashisabaki, their footwork, with how they should go about it in shiai or shinsa. So one of the things you can do though to start making inroads into this is develop your understanding of the distance that you should turn around and the attitude you should have after the strike. So although you are doing this continuous footwork and you're going to build a lot of distance, maybe even go to the end of the dojo, whatever the sensei has asked you, instead of striking what many people do, which is to man, and then this footwork kind of slows down gradually until they turn, accelerate. So as your strike lands, bang, go quicker. So it's instead of man, turn, which is quite common, it should be man, turn. Yeah. So you get those feet shuffling along, right? So accelerate as you land the strike, right, off that front foot. And then another thing that you can do is that at least when you do turn around, even if you are using full length of the dojo, something to consider. A lot of people, when they're wearing the men, they don't think they can really move their head much, and that's actually not true. You've got quite a free range of motion left to right, within reason, as long as you're wearing it properly. So if you've just cut the men in Kihon practice, you're turning to your left. Try having a look with your head before you turn. So try to build a healthy distance so that you go to Toma, right? So that's the point where they can't strike you and you can't strike them, right? Not here where it's like Sokui Tonomai, one step, one cut. But you're just outside that attacking distance. Maybe a little further than that, but don't get completely disjointed from them unless sensei tells you full length of the dojo, right? And it's oikomi keiko or something. So you do your cut, yeah, man, look, then turn. Okay, and another thing you can do is, obviously you always hear don't turn with your shinai and chudan. This is just like haphazard, right? Clearly not concentrating. But also there's a danger you hit people with your shinai in the dojo, especially if it's a busy dojo. So don't do that. But what you can do is you can think more about turning in kamae. You will see a lot of shioi players who cut and they put their shinai first and then turn. I don't really like the look of that personally, but I understand why a lot of them do it. I think there's a tidier looking way to do it, and you can, to me this doesn't add anything for me personally. So one of the things I find that works is just to move temporarily through kind of like hasso no kamae. So basically bring the shinai close to your body, look first, and then step in towards the opponent. So it's man, shuffle, 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 look, turn, right? So you bring your sword like this, back into chudan this way. I find that works for me quite well. So that's something you can start in your very, very, very basic Kihon. Right, let's move on to some other things. Okay, so in this exercise, it's basically I-men practice. You're doing the small men together at the same time essentially, but you're trying to win debana. You're trying to win the first strike, right? To do this, you have to keep your concentration high. Because you're going to react to, usually as a person who takes a turn out, and they might use their shinai to, say, strike the floor, or if you've got a taiko drum, nice for some, if you have it. We don't have one, so that's the way we get around it. But just something loud, a whistle, anything that can give a cue, right? A short, sharp blow of a whistle will do fine. A short, sharp hit, a hit of a drum, something like that, something that's really, really easy for everyone to hear in the whole dojo. And it's a quick sound, short and sharp. But basically, you engage at roughly isoku itanomai, and you try and get a connection in a seme. Yeah, try to build a little bit of pressure against your opponent. They do the same to you. You engage, you connect, loads of spirit, and you listen. What key to this is controlling that back foot. So what I was talking about in the Suburi, you're now putting that under a little bit more pressure, right? And same thing, otherwise try to finish the strike from start to finish. The only thing you're not doing really is generating the opportunity, because someone's doing that for you, okay, by blowing the whistle. But it really helps to develop this controlling of your kamae. It helps you to stop fidgeting with your back foot under pressure. If your back foot is underneath you, you can strike again. Long and short of it. So it helps with the migamai thing, but you've also got to stay alert and pay attention. You've got to listen, but you can't look at the person who's got the whistle or who's got the shinai or the drum, because if you look at them and they do it, then you're not looking at the opponent and they'll hit you, right? So you've got to focus on your opponent, their demeanor. And you can't just strike where you kind of please, because they're also going for men, so you need to kind of observe them if you want to get a cut through. That doesn't mean go around, you still want to go straight, but you kind of want to ride their shinai in through the center. It's like kind of taking the center when you step in chudan, you make a bit of pressure in the center. You're almost going to do that kind of thing straight through fighting for the men. It's not easy. Most of them you'll spend being unsuccessful. Now and again you'll get one, and it'll be worth it. Okay, you can also do some variations on that, so you can still have the person blowing the whistle, controlling the drill. You practice your menuj or your kote, but this time you're going to move into a tayatari situation, aim to make tayatari. Motodachi receives that tayatari, and so it becomes a stalemate situation, and you move to subetsariai and look for the opportunity for hikiwaza. You can do these in set patterns, or you can have the motodachi feed the hikiwaza opportunity. It's up to you. I would suggest you vary it. Don't be too contrived with it. And be generous with the timing. You're not trying to trick kakarite, the person who's doing the exercise. You're not trying to trick them. You're trying to help them show that if they're paying attention and they keep their concentration high, opportunities will be on the table. They will arise. So you just have to keep your eye on the ball, keep putting pressure on, stay alert, and you'll get another opportunity. And then if you have the posture, you have the awareness, you should be able to take advantage of it. Okay, so this next one, it's kind of like, I'd like to call it piggy in the middle. But effectively the way it works is, depends on how many motodachi you have available to do this. You do need a reasonably big group to do it. I would say usually a minimum of 5, but you can get away with maybe 3 at a minimum, like a bare minimum, but it might run a bit clunky. 5 is an ideal minimum, but if you have 6 people, that's where I think it works the best, most fluidly. But there's ways you can structure it and get around it. You can actually, and I'll link a clip of Eiga Sensei's demonstration, his Ojiwaza demonstration. It's basically that in a nutshell. So yeah, I'll stick that in at the end to show you what you're aiming for. So I'll show you the way it runs in our dojo. Bear in mind we've got a big mix of levels here. Some of these guys are trying this, maybe they've only done it a handful of times. So do go easy on them, you know. It can get messy when you first try this. Okay, so long short of it is there's like a person in the middle, and to one side of them there's 2 or 3 motodachi, and behind them there's 2 or 3 motodachi. The motodachi that are coming at them from the front can only do men attacks. The motodachi that are coming at them from behind can only do kote attacks. So it goes like this: they cut a men, you turn around, they cut a kote, you turn around again, they cut a men, you turn around again, they cut a second kote, then you turn around again and they cut a final men. And it's your chance to practice Ojiwaza against the men and kote attacks. Okay? So for example, you could do men suriage men, turn around kote suriage kote, turn around men nukido, turn around kote nuki men, turn around men kaishido, and that would be your 5 techniques. You want to kind of use the space that's in the middle. You don't want to do full going through kind of movements, right? You want to cut, keep your spirit high, keep the ki-ai going, keep the shout going, but you kind of want to, you want them to be going through and kind of washing off you, if that makes sense. Yeah, so that's the trick to getting this done, is don't go too far from the middle, because you'll never get time to get set up again against the next person, and it destroys the flow. As far as the motodachi are concerned, they don't want to show off either, so they want to cut, do their cut, you do your technique, and they're straight out of there. Don't dwell in the middle, get out of the way, because the next person, the next motodachi is ready to go. And it needs to have a continuous flow. And what this does is it really works on like getting people to get a move on with their alertness, like paying attention, being in the right place at the right time. And if you really want to be good at this, if you're the person in the middle, you should have a little spare time even, so that you're so good at controlling the space that actually you're the one making the seme step. You're stepping in towards them to make them do their men, to make them do their kote. And once you're doing that, your ojiwaza become a lot easier, because you're not waiting to see when they're going to attack, you're anticipating. You know, because you're kind of calling the shots. So this is a fantastic exercise. It's one of those things you don't have to do it all the time, just do it periodically. Like I said, it does get scrappy. Judge the level of the room. If it's like real beginners and stuff like that, then it's not really necessary for their kendo. But certainly I think if you've got a downgrade, you know, if you've passed your shodan, yeah, this kind of stuff, it's going to be very helpful in your progression to like nidan and sandan in particular. Because you need that balance, you need that coordination, you need to be fluid on your feet, light on your feet, and crucially, you need to get your awareness operating at a much higher level. Okay, so this one is a lot of fun to do, but I would use it very sparingly. You'll have seen, if you've been around on the internet quite a bit, that there are 1 or 2 videos from like pre-war era Kendo knocking about, very early footage. And one thing you'll notice, other than the fact that they do a lot of grappling and pull each other's armor off and all that kind of stuff, it's quite rough and tumble. One of the other things you'll notice is that there's quite often footage of multiple attackers on one person. So this can be quite fun to try. I don't mean do what you see in the video. Hopefully you can see what we do here, and this is a more appropriate example. But essentially what you're looking to do is everyone is going to go for one person for say 15 seconds or something like that. You just establish a time. Doesn't need to be too long. It's a short, high pressure situation. The point of this is not how well they do their waza. The point of this is putting them under this kind of pressure, okay, where they have to look around, they have to manage the room. So you'll notice very quickly that somebody who hasn't done this before, what often ends up happening is they back away from people to try to manage the distance. This is a kind of a poor strategy. You're better off going through people. That's like ideal. If you can go forward and through, then that's ideal. If you can't do that, then maybe you're moving off to the side. Sometimes you're moving through people when you notice gaps opening up between them. You might be able to slip through, that kind of thing. But what you really don't want to do is end up near a wall or in a corner. And that's something on a safety note, just be aware of. Be aware of walls. Don't have people crashing into walls, especially going backwards, because the back of their head is not protected. So just be aware of that. But the other thing is, the point is not that, say, 10 people try to strike this person all at once. So don't be silly with it, and don't put the kakarite, the person doing the exercise, at a safety risk. What they need to feel is pressure from several people advancing at the same time. So let's say they've got 2 or 3 people that are kind of coming towards them at the same time, and they don't really know where the attack is going to come from until somebody chooses to launch the attack. That's kind of the balance that we're looking to go for. And now and again you might actually get hit by 2 people at the same time. That's okay if it's in the natural flow of things. I'm not saying you need to be so contrived that you've got to wait for everybody to take their turn like they do in bad movie choreography. But don't let it become judge the situation. Like there's already 2 or 3 people making the pressure. I'll do something else. I'll see what they do, the kakarite does to respond to that situation, and then I will make a decision on how I'm going to pressure them. But yeah, anyway, you do that for say 15, 20 seconds. Somebody blows a whistle, rotate the next person in, and so on and so forth. Again, you use this one sparingly because all form and all your best kendo is going to probably go out the window. So you don't want to encourage bad habits. But just being put in this kind of pressure cooker situation is really, really good for keeping your wits sharp. And if you don't have any wits yet, because you're new to all of this, your only way you're going to learn is by getting exposed to it. And many people think that Zanshin is a type of footwork, a type of movement. And that's not the case, it's a state of mind. But if you really have that state of mind and you're acting with riai, with the reason of why you're doing something in mind, so if you're not doing it aimlessly, then there's certain things that shouldn't be able to be seen in your kendo. One of which is establishing eye contact and making good use of the space and turning around in a position that puts you in a place to A, strike again, and B, not have the initiative taken off of you, and lastly, not being off balance, okay? So I don't have a motodachi here with me tonight, so I'm just going to use a shadow motodachi, which I'll use with the video editing magic, and I'll try to demonstrate what I mean. So first I'll show you the basic Kihon when you're practicing, and maybe sensei asks you, use the whole dojo, practice your ashisabaki, go through all the way down to the bottom of the dojo. Yeah, and then I'll show you what you would do more in a live situation and what makes it, what sets it apart, okay? Hopefully it will be obviously visual, like there'll be obvious visual indicators, but I'll also explain it, okay? When we're coaching beginners, if we teach them
to strike it and turn and retreat like this, yeah, with the hands forward. A lot of times what happens is they end up orbiting the motodachi, sort of like, and then they sort of orbit them like this. And this is probably one of the worst things you could do, because A, it doesn't control the space. It puts you right in their kill box for the hikiwaza. B, as you're rotating around like this, your feet are kind of pointed like this. Yeah, right as you go to the left or right side. So what happens is, if you were to get a push, you have no stability and you would fall on your backside, okay? So both of these things are obviously bad. We want to avoid breaks in posture, and we obviously want to put ourselves in a position where we can step in and make seme again, okay? So if you're too close, you struck someone and you stay here, the only option, if you've done it well, is the hikiwaza. But you then have to make the tsugaseryai to make an opportunity. But a lot of times that's not what happens. People go and they sort of circle around and then try to back out like this, and that's neither here nor there. And while you're sort of doing this, you're very vulnerable to attack, and even here, because it's low concentration, you're not focused on the opponent, and you're not really in the right distance to make the hikiwaza itself. You're kind of neither here nor there. You're not in Tsugaseryai, so you're not in Kamai, and you're not in Chikamai to make the strike. So yeah, just something to bear in mind. And this is why a lot of times beginners are shown to go through, make a healthy distance before turning. And this is okay as well. Up to a certain level, as long as you are genuinely paying some sort of attention to where your opponent is. You should remember that when you have the men on, you can turn your head, you know, so you can look before you can turn. Okay, so I'll demonstrate a couple that are, I think, appropriate for people up to, say, EQ. An appropriate variation where you're still driving through and building distance, but the turn is sharper and it has more awareness about it, as opposed to the first example, which just kind of goes off into the distance and kind of ignores what is happening behind you. Okay, so let's have a look at that.
And that brings me to my last kind of closing comments on this, which is, you know, ultimately you need to practice this mindset in every bit of Kendo that you do. In Suburi, it's the priority is by far and away on form. In Kihon, the priority is still on form, but the spirit aspect of it and then the mental alertness is starting to come into play, because you're working with a partner, you're actually striking the bolgu. They're encouraged, once you go past, they're encouraged to go often after you, quite often, so therefore you should have Zanshin. So that's something to bear in mind. When you go into Uchikomi Keiko, the pressure is increased slightly more. You're expected to make seme for an opportunity to be opened by the motodachi. So, and then you need to have the alertness to strike it without hesitation and full commitment. So you need to really try and throw your body into that. And you're going to, when you do it that way, where you really try to do it without hesitation, you will get it wrong. You will cut the wrong target from time to time. And in that sense, it tests your level of concentration, your level of awareness. And when you're turning around, you know, you're going through past the sensei or something like that, and you're turning around, don't let it drop. You know, go through with determination, with speed, with vigor. Turn around sharply and look to make that next seme step. Basically, you want to try to drive the flow of the Uchikomi Keiko, and the teacher, the motodachi, is there to facilitate you. They're not there to just, here's a men, here's a kote, here's a door. You know, that's okay at the beginning, but sooner or later you need to move on. And then of course you've got Kakari Keiko. Kakari Keiko is so valuable not just from a physical standpoint. Most people think of it from a physical standpoint, but really it's a very, very strong test of your overall concentration, especially when it gets tough. Yeah, so, and if you're strong physically, sometimes it can look like you're winning at Kakari Keiko because you can go for longer than other people and you're faster than other people. But I'll tell you, the mental concentration side, often this is the first thing you see slip, is you start doing things to the motodachi that are sort of like irrelevant. Maybe you go for like the kind of strikes that just wouldn't be appropriate in that time and stuff like that. You will make mistakes at it, and that's fine, that's how you learn. Ultimately you're pushing to make it look sharp, to make it look strong, to have the good posture in all those things. But the idea is that the level of mental pressure that you put under during the course of the session gradually gets cranked up and up and up a bit, right? And then of course you go into the Jikeiko. The Jikeiko, actually the pressure comes off a little bit because you have freedom to learn and make mistakes in Jikeiko. But there is the pressure of the fact that the other person is definitely looking to make ippon against you, okay? And then I suppose really, depending on your outlook on things, probably Shiai then is the maximum pressure. So make sure you do Shiai. Go to Taikai, compete. You have to deal with those nerves. You have to learn to work in the Shiaijo, the space that's allotted. Get out of the habit of retreating, don't step into corners. All these things I've mentioned, they'll be put to the test when you do the Shiai. Most people get the most nervous when they do the Shiai. So you should expose yourself to that pressure. Even if you're someone who's not really into competitive Kendo, just make sure maybe you get 1 or 2 Shiai a year. And that'll keep you on the right path, just keep it fresh in your mind. And that's it. That's what I've got for you today. Okay, so while I don't think you can teach someone Zanshin, I think you can offer them some insight, and you can put them in situations where you kind of have to sink or swim in them, but you don't have to put them in the most dangerous depths first. You expose them a little bit, and once, it's like the sun, you get exposed a little bit and then you get a bit of a tan on you and your skin's a bit more robust. And then you crank it up a bit more and so on. Except the only difference is, in Kendo at some point it's going to get turned up to like factor 50 scorch your skin, sunburn level at some point. It's just going to happen to you. But it's part and parcel of it. Usually once it happens to you, you're ready for it. So that hopefully is the case. But yeah, please enjoy your Kendo. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if there's anything you think I've left out, do give me a shout. But until next time, bye bye.